Welcome to the State of Real Estate, a live weekly conversation about what's actually happening in our industry right now. I'm Eric Zollinger, Chief Customer Officer. This is RLTYco's new roundtable. No prepared talking points, no predetermined conclusions, just informed voices having an honest conversation. Think of this as a real estate version of a Sunday morning roundtable. We'll cover the headlines, the stories flying under the radar, and the things that matter most to agents, brokers, and the people we serve. Today, we're launching with three people I deeply respect, not just for what they know, but how they show up for the industry each and every day. We'll hear from them in just a moment. Let's get to it. This week's guests are Heather Domi of Douglas Elliman and founder of NIRAC, Jason Haber of Compass and co-founder of ARA, and Briggs Elwell, co-founder of RLTYco and a board member of ARA. Let's start off with the biggest story in the headlines facing our nation today, and that would be Zillow, Compass, MRAD, and RealTracs. Who would like to summarize what's happened up till now and where we're going from here?
Who draws the short straw?
I think
you first spoke, Jason,
first,
so I think that's you.
So it's on you.
I didn't realize that. You know, in summer camp, we used to do the nose thing, and the last one, I know you guys never did that when you were growing up. So look, our thing is right now, we're in an incredibly disruptive moment of our industry. It's not my term, but people call it the post-NAR real estate world. I think that's true. And what's happening is, with all this disruption, you're seeing sort of these new ecosystems are going to be built and things are going to change. Whether it's private listings, whether it's listings that don't necessarily appear on Zillow for, frankly, a myriad of reasons. You know, in all this conversation, I think we forget that agents don't work for the portals. We provide the content. We are the world's biggest content creators, but the only ones that give it away for free. And then buy it back.
Yeah,
and everyone says, this is fucking okay. Well, you know what? It's absurd. It is absurd.
So let's go back to how this all started. Well, not how it got started, but the most recent. You have Zillow suing Compass, correct? And this is after the Compass and other Zillow lawsuit basically got dismissed or they left it. But this is the new one where Zillow was suing Compass over the feed, correct? And then it involved the MRAD system first out of Chicago, their MLS?
Yes, well, it's a Sherman antitrust claim there that MRAD, by blocking out Zillow, is violated. That's their claim. That Zillow filed a Sherman antitrust claim on MRAD, that its MLS data is being used as leverage to force Compass private listings onto Zillow. Now listen, this is going to get worked out in the courts. For the moment, there's a temporary restraining order in place. So for the moment,
and then RealTracs, which is another MLS, they still have Zillow's feed on, correct? While this gets worked through.
They've announced an intention to do the same thing that MRAD is doing in a couple of weeks. It keeps getting kicked down the road a little bit. But I think fundamentally, people don't understand why the brokerage, particularly Compass, is actually doing this. And it's not because of the fact that Compass is trying to create some, mystical private network and cut out all the brokerages. They're trying to actually take back control of the data that they create and distribute and give choice to the consumers. And Zillow is restricting that choice. And so what's happening is the MLSs are stuck in the middle because they're basically these vehicles where brokerages pay to distribute through an MLS, and then it gets sent out to a listings service such as Zillow or Redfin. But Zillow has taken a stance of trying to control how the feeds actually get distributed to the consumer. And the irony is that the consumer's choice is being stripped. The ability to actually have a private listing in the event of privacy, and if you're a celebrity or whatnot, you may actually want it not to be published, and you may want to actually test the market before it gets onto Zillow. It has nothing to do with trying to create a closed loop system. It is entirely on the fact that the consumer and the broker should have control and decision making in how listings are distributed.
But Briggs, that's not how Compass originally did it. They were saying they wanted their own private listing network, and they just wanted it off Zillow. And you could still go to the Compass website and see all these off-market listings. That's a public portal. So my confusion with all this is that people aren't speaking the same vocabulary and vernacular. There's a lot of confusion in that, and I'm not sure if Compass is still having that separate system, but that's how it got started.
It's still separate. I think just to add a little clarity to that, Eric, I mean, listen, it's known that I was at Compass and I left in December and I'm at Douglas Elliman, and I reached out to Robert personally and I said, I don't want to put anybody in a bad position, but I know plenty of agents at other brokerages who have access to the private exclusives. And so I just figured I'd ask you, and can you have somebody set me up on a private exclusive search? He said, yeah, sure, absolutely, no problem. We've set up thousands of agents on private exclusives, and he bumped me over to Will Hardy and they set me up on a search, and I get those private exclusives in my inbox every day. So, he's not trying to hide private exclusives. He is, I think, doing fundamentally what he believes is right for the industry. He's trying to find a way to put the genie back in the bottle. And the MLSs really let this whole thing get away from them a very long time ago with the licensing agreements. And they haven't figured out how to do it. And that's really what he's working towards, is giving us more power and control and say, as for our work product, as Jason and Briggs both mentioned, and for the consumer.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. And the reality is that, unfortunately, in the news, it's being portrayed that Robert is just trying to create this closed system for Compass. It's not, it couldn't be further from the truth. And to your point, the mistake is been originated from the MLSs, because, if you go back 100 years, MLSs were created because of the idea that brokerages didn't have access for ease of distribution to channels like the New York Times. Fast forward to today, and you have the internet, which makes everything one click, to get dispersed. And so they are collecting fees from these hubs, Zillow, Redfin, et cetera. But the brokerage world has no benefit. Not only are they not receiving income from the content they create, they're paying to distribute it. And then they eventually get through to a Zillow or Redfin and end up having to pay for placement within those platforms. It's kind of, I think we've reached a place here where the MLS system as a whole is pushing towards a national listing service, because that's the only way, especially in the world of AI, with what's happening right now, where consumers are going to look at listings in a completely different fashion a year from now than they are today. Paying a toll to get your home through a brokerage to an MLS to a listings hub, and then it gets to the consumer is incredibly inefficient.
And Briggs, correct me if I'm wrong, but haven't some of the MLSs figured out a way to monetize, and this became a profit center for them in a way
I mean,
that I think it wasn't meant to be.
MLSs are not government bodies. They are, some of them are owned by conglomerates effectively, but at the end of the day, they're all private institutions generating revenue for themselves, and so what they do is they pool data from brokerages within their region, and then they sell it to a Zillow or a Redfin, and the funds that come through that don't go back to the brokerage. And it's actually it's even more challenging than that, because the brokerage has to pay membership fees to those MLSs. And if you happen to be in a region where it has crisscross, like a Westchester, Fairfield County, you actually are paying multiple fees to get your listings through the consumer, while the MLS continues to collect revenue from the end user product, which is your Zillow and your Redfin. And that, again, if you look back in history, was created because brokerages truly at that time were take photo, send listing to MLS, show house. Today, brokers have so much more sophistication and technology behind them to be able to actually distribute. You have social media, for example, which didn't exist, of course, 100 years ago. MLSs are truly functioning as bridges. If you think about it, it's a toll system. And, the bridge was necessary when the only way to get the listing to the consumer was to drive it across that bridge. But thanks to internet and now the fast forwarding of AI, Brokers don't need all of these, these kind of hula hoops to go through to be able to take a photo and send it to a consumer. At the end of the day, you could theoretically have your entire business based on social media if you wanted to. Clearly, that wouldn't be the right choice. But the idea that you have to pay a membership fee to a local MLS, then pay to have it distributed, the MLS then sells that feed to a platform like Zillow, makes tons of money off of it. So they're making money from both the brokerage membership fee, then the listing feed fee. And none of that goes back to the brokerage, which is the creator of that content, is kind of wild. And so if you think about it from a step-by-step basis, right now, take photo, upload photo gets sent to an MLS that you pay to be a member of. They then take that photo, sell it to a platform so that you can post it. They make money off of that no matter what happens. You sell it or it doesn't have, no matter what, right? It's sold, it doesn't get sold. They make money. You're left with nothing. And the reality is, if you look at every other industry, whether it's finance or music is probably the best. Spotify, perfect case study. Why are the brokerages not in control, and why don't they own their data? And I think when you look at it, that's really what Robert is getting to. And I think that's where everything is headed.
But isn't the real power where everybody is going? You just mentioned Spotify. So Zillow has the power because that's where everybody is going to find their listings, to be honest. And so what if, and this is from Ricky Cruz's podcast with James Wiggins of Next Home. James was like, well, what if Zillow becomes a brokerage tomorrow? They're already making all of this referral fees on every single person. I mean, listen, I paid a high referral fee to get new clients. They're in control. And if they become a brokerage tomorrow, they literally can tell everybody, well, you're already paying this referral fee. What's the difference if you're with CIH or you're with Zillow?
They are a brokerage already.
They are a brokerage. Yeah, they do have a license.
Yeah. And so is Redfin. They don't do a ton of business, but they both are brokerages.
Right. Well, that's how they can collect referral fees.
Correct.
Yeah.
But what if they demand everyone that they have to come join their brokerage? I mean, that's not out of the picture, and it's technically, that's kind of the what if here.
Well, listen, if you look at the what surfaced during the trial between Zillow and Compass and their sticks and foes strategy and forcing agents to switch brokerages and things like that. I mean, that's what they're trying to do, right? Whether it's them or with some other brokerage that's going to be friendly with and partner with Zillow, that is part of their model. And that is why they're fining. And that's why it's expensive for us to pay to play. And, they're trying to monetize it at every level. They have shareholders they're responsible to. But I mean, listen, it's gone sideways to the point of, it's creating a lot of chaos in the industry. This whole system is creating bad actors who are taking advantage. I mean, the double ending of deals is a thing. And there are people out there who are trying to, inside their little bubbles, control inventory. And so that's where I think we're all going to get into trouble with what's going on, is some of these bad actors within these different schemes that are being kind of created and playing out with what Robert's trying to do, that I think is gonna be the downfall of some of it.
So going forward, it's the brokerages that are members of MLSs, correct? Not agents, or is it the other way around?
I think it's
agents pay outside of New York City. Yeah, agents
both.
will pay to be a monthly fee or quarterly fee for MLS access. In many jurisdictions, not all anymore, they pay their local MLS, a state association, and NAR at the same time.
Right.
Now that has begun to disaggregate now, which is one of the big sea changes in the industry. This is different than how it is in New York City, though.
Right.
So brokerages, there are brokerages that own pieces or they're on the boards of MLSs. Some actually, in some smaller markets, own pieces of them. The idea was that originally they were supposed to be the owners. That fell apart years and years, decades ago.
So why do you think, I think my question would be, why Why Chicago and why Nashville? Why are
Right.
those two MLSs that are willing to do this or want to do this? Are they not set up as the same profit centers as some of these other MLSs?
So
I,
Nashville is a particular case. It's owned by 7 state associations. And what happened in the aftermath of the NAR settlement, associations are now looking to get out of, in many cases, the MLS business. And so with the associations leaving, it's given the MLS more freedom and flexibility what they can do. And
I think there's an interesting point to that a lot of these MLSs, it appears to be, are seeing that they're reading the tea leaves and understanding that with the technology that is continuing to get better, but also going to be obsolete in the near future, they're trying to get out of the space. And
Right.
the unique thing is the one piece that they could still theoretically hold on to in the near future is to do exactly what they both just did with Zillow, which is it's really a bit of a flex. They're going to try and tell Zillow, we want to have control or we will shut you off. Part two of that is pay us more, theoretically. And I think that where they all go is remains to be seen. I actually am curious to both Heather and Jason, but what do you think is the reason that New York, being effectively the center of the financial world, we have functioned without an MLS? Why does nobody talk about that at the national level? Because you would think if there was ever a place to have an MLS, it would be New York City. We've managed to do without it. Why is that not a bigger conversation?
But doesn't the RLS function basically as our MLS? It's not the same rules, but it's very
not
similar.
the same. It's not the same. Yeah.
It's so basically, historically over the years, the concept of a direct data entry into one source, which would be the MLS, is what the main brokerage heads had opposed back in the day. So everybody wanted to control their inventory, hold their inventory. So if at one point they wanted to say, we're out, they could be out. Because as soon as you start doing direct data entry into that MLS, you don't have control of your data. So instead, in New York, we all enter our own data into our own company's proprietary systems, and then those systems send the feeds to the RLS, and then the RLS sends them out. So it's a gateway keeping everything behind a wall. So if a brokerage does want to shut it off, they can shut it off in 1 second, which in an MLS, you can't do that.
But don't you think it's a statement that in the most financially influent city in the country, and obviously debatably the world, we've managed to not have an MLS and it's worked?
It's worked to a degree, but then that's what caused Street Easy to be born.
Right.
That's the
Right?
flip side.
True.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
That's the opposite. Yeah, that's the flip side.
and I think this whole thing boils down to changing consumer behavior. And what is the one mechanism that you can change consumer behavior? And the only way to change it is if it doesn't show up on Street Easy or it doesn't show up on Zillow. So
They're very sticky sites. We've learned that.
Yeah,
That's
incredibly sticky.
the hard way.
And look, Andy Florence spent a ton of money trying to make, City Snap and Home Snap and his other products gain market share. Realtor.com, they've all spent millions of dollars to try and gain the market share.
Hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions. They've had no success in changing consumer behavior. So what's going to change it?
So is this where there's a potential for a national MLS that might gain? I mean, I see a couple of the local MLSs trying to go national. Is that a solution?
Yeah, I mean that's different though. Like when a local goes national, it's still a local. Like no one's going to use the Chicago system outside of. No one's going to go from Denver to.
Correct.
Like at the end of the day, it's the only future for this industry because of the age of AI. You need a national system owned by the brokerages, or at least partially owned by the brokerages, to control the data. I guarantee you in 5 years from now, your buyers aren't going to public websites because they're going to have an agent, not a real estate agent, I mean an AI agent, that simply pushes to them, Johnny, there's a 2-bedroom that just came on the market on 96th Street, and I think this is exactly what you've been thinking about. And it's all going to be done through AI agents and bots.
Douglas Elliman already has that, correct, Heather?
What's that?
Douglas
But
Elliman
it's
has already
trying to
instituted
mass
this.
adoption in a way that will shift consumer behavior. And so before that happens, this industry, essential to its success in the future, must own and control the deployment of its own data.
Well, that's the Spotify speech. That's the Spotify speech right there.
Hard stuff.
So how do we get there? Or is there an appetite for the brokerages to get there?
I think the answer that we all know is there is absolutely an appetite for it. I think that the heads of the big brokerages across the United States are realizing very clearly that data control is pivotal. I do think, going back to the Compass presentation of what Robert's been doing with private listings, that's exactly what he's trying to do, is to control the data. Whether it's controlling it from the broker standpoint or the consumer standpoint, it's all the same. They have to actually have authority over where it goes, how it's distributed, and how they want it presented. To Jason's point in regards to controlling it from a standpoint of AI, listen, the reality is very simple. You could do the work with AI today, doing underwriting for a company that would have taken 30 days, with 2 PhDs or MBAs. You can now do it in 2 hours through Claude. And yes, you need a human touch to actually, make it presentable at the end. But the reality is it's very, very sound. If brokerages don't control their data in a very, very short period of time, the consumer is going to be able to go through an AI platform, an AI agent, and say, show me every house in my budget. It's going to be automatically linked to their bank account. So their budget will literally just be fluid. And it will say, you can afford this, and this house is worth X, and they're going to run the comps for you. It's all going to be automated. The piece that is missing is the human touch. And the reality is, at the lower price point levels, I think consumers don't need as much handholding. Nobody is going to start buying, $15 million houses without getting some air of confidence. Wealth management's not suddenly going to disappear because of AI, for example. And so agents are advisors. That piece will not leave. But you need to control the data, or else there is going to be some tech platform that is developed in a very short period of time that will take away a lot of the steps that agents participate in today.
Has anyone used Fable 5 yet? Like, Fable 5 dropped, 48 hours ago on Claude? It's expensive to use, but, I've been using it to understand, it is scary how fast we've gone from Opus to Fable, and the difference between 4 or 5 to then now to 4.8 and now to Fable 5. And what I was able to build last night, it was insane.
Wow.
Are you turning on Claude, Jason?
No.
That is Claude.
Oh, that is Claude.
It's the next version, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Because I refer to you as Claude Haber. So,
I actually didn't know about Fable 5 until this morning when I was doing some work, and I'm like, wait, what's Fable 5? I'm like, I don't want to use up all my money, right? Just using that. So
right, because it takes 2x the compute because it's so advanced.
It's so advanced.
I'm saying one behind so that I don't use all my what I call my magic potion or my pixie dust to go through. So, we've been talking a lot about Compass and also about the New York market. Letitia James just launched a probe into Compass, and how potentially in some markets, Compass is 80% with CIH. Is anybody else concerned about their market share going forward? Because this is, it's interesting to see that it's potentially in New York that big of a market share.
I think that for starters, it's not going to go anywhere in the near future. I will actually make a single sentence, and I'm curious to see what everyone else thinks. But I think that the firms that properly utilize AI in the near future, this is actually going to be the moment for boutiques versus one big firm taking over. I think smaller firms that are lean and mean and actually take advantage of the technology are going to be able to thrive in this market. But in regards to what Letitia James is doing, I think that is a PR stunt, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Interesting. Okay. Any other comments? I mean, it's.
I don't know if it's a PR stunt. I mean, I think until it's hard unless you get a coalition of attorney generals together and you multi-state something like this. And even so, given the politics of DOJ, this is a very hard deal to unwind.
It'll get stopped. It'll get stopped at the top. She could have some motion with it, but the reality is, if it even gets there, it will be blocked.
Yeah.
So sticking with the states, the Connecticut governor just signed a bill restricting private listings. Then there's major implications for the broader market with PLNs. Where are we with some of the other states restricting PLNs, and do you see this as a big movement going forward? Heather, I see you wanting to respond.
I mean, listen, it's not, these rules that they're signing aren't any different than what our board associations have already told us. There's nothing new here in that. So, and there's, the seller has to sign something to do this. Like, we're already doing that. So I find that very, it's just not that meaningful. And,
right. And by the way, there are opt-outs in there. They're the same opt-outs that we have.
Yeah, it's not meaningful at all. It's not. Yeah. And I think, listen, they're wasting their time. It shows me they don't understand our industry. I think my bigger concern for our New York market as a whole, just stepping back a little bit, with Compass having 80% of the share, my bigger concern is they have the ability to pull out of REBNY in 2 seconds. And what does that mean for the rest of the industry, and how would we function? So I think that I have concerns as an agent. I wonder how that plays out. And I do think that there is, it is lopsided. The power is definitely lopsided for a few things. So I would personally like to see some balancing. I think it would be smart for Compass to do it on their own, one way or the other. Just to acknowledge it and recognize that, let's put everybody at ease. Let's, slice the pie one way or the other, whether it's divesting some of the brands or making some sort of a commitment to the industry that they're going to play at a level field. I just think that it can't completely just get swept under the carpet.
Any other comments on REBNY and CIH?
Well, Jason's a newly appointed board member of REBNY, so I'm very excited to hear what he has to say.
I wear many hats. I'm like
a lot of hats.
I have a lot of hats. Listen, REBNY has a very important function to play in the city, in the state politics. You don't get credit in life for the things you defeat / kill privately in politics. Like, when something goes away, you can't chest dump it, because then it comes right back. The great example of that is getting the COPA bill from last December from not having a super majority, so they couldn't override an Eric Adams veto. That was a major accomplishment that got 0 high fives, because you just can't celebrate that kind of thing, because then it antagonizes the council. But things like that it's a really good example of things that they accomplished without fanfare, and that's just the way politics works. But it was a big deal. Now COPA's coming back, but in different form. They've made some changes to it, and I'll be in City Hall later this year testifying against it, like I was last time. But the politics are tricky to navigate right now in the industry with REBNY, and
Well,
I
then
think
let's
at
continue with that. And
NIRAC, we try to be part of the solutions too. One of the things that I love what we're doing at NIRAC right now, just for our NIRAC members as an example, we have an AI chatbot called Patch, which is Pied-à-Terre Tax Community Hub. That's what it stands for. Thank you.
awesome.
And agents are using Patch to ask all their questions. So when a question comes up, they're with the client about the pied-à-terre tax, they ask Patch, and they get their answer right away.
That's
so
amazing.
We're trying to be like really responsive on this, because they're like, it's not, the pied-à-terre tax questions are the kind of thing where it's not like, all right, I got it, and you move on, you know it. It's like constantly going to new questions. New questions will come up, new scenarios, and so we're trying to arm agents with information in real time.
It is
Jason,
appalling.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Eric. It is appalling how in even the most high-end news outlets, whether it's CNBC, you name it, nobody is correctly explaining the pied-à-terre tax. And the fact that they all believe it's $1 million is so wrong. I'll kick it to Jason to properly explain it, but the assessment is being completely misrepresented in the public, and it's causing mass hysteria because people truly believe if you own a $1 million apartment, you're getting hit with the tax.
I had a big Fox News guy I was playing tennis with over the weekend. He comes up to me and he goes, "You see, I told you they were going to lower it from 5 million to $1 million, and now it's $1 million." And I was like, "No, it's not." He said, "No, I saw it on Fox." And I was like, all right, well, they got the information wrong.
Jason, you are our policy guy. So can you, in a nutshell, explain what the pied-à-terre tax actually is? And I forwarded your Instagram post about the co-op boards and how intricate this is. Can you just let our viewers and guests understand this in a nutshell?
Well, in a nutshell, no, but I'll try to get it in like nutshell. It's so fucking nuts.
Yeah.
But let me just, in the plainest terms, the Department of Finance, for the rest of this conversation, I'm just going to say DOF because it's just too much of a word salad. So the DOF on any tax bill in a condo or home or townhouse will produce the tax bill. You'll see the DOF market value, which is not to be confused with the actual market value of a home. Now, they have some degree of correlation, but we have already demonstrated it is not 100% correlation. It's probably closer to 80, actually. We've found many cases where the correlation is very poor. The idea is anything over, for the first 2 years, starting July 1st of this year to June 30th of 2028, for a condo or townhouse, 1 million and higher on DOF market value.
The assessed value.
No.
Oh.
No. This is where it gets confusing. Not the assessed value. So there are two, if we pull up a tax bill, if anyone wants to pull up a tax bill, we can pull anyone up. There's assessed value and DOF market value. For calculation purposes of the pied-à-terre tax, we are only talking about the DOF market value. If you're under $1 million, go have a cigarette and call it a day. Nothing to see here. If you're at $1 million, not that anyone smokes anymore. I mean, I obviously I don't. If you're $1 million or higher, you're in the pied-à-terre tax zone for at least the next 2 years. Then why 2 years? New York has a very poor system of valuing actual market value of homes, which we don't do. In other states, they tend to raise property taxes, for example, on sales. So Florida is a good example. When you sell a home, the tax rate changes on sale. So they have the actual sale price and they do a calculation of sale. We don't do that in New York. We have a very different system. Over the next 2 years, the legislation requires by law the Department of Finance to come up with a new system. Now, I know we just sent people to the moon and back, but I gotta tell you, I don't think they're gonna be able to do this in 2 years. There's no poly market line
There's no
on
way.
this.
Yeah.
But if poly market lets me bet on this shit, I'm taking the no all day long. Because I don't think they're going to be able. This is so complicated and impacts so many homes in so many boroughs. I don't think it can be done. But they say in 2 years from now, they'll have a different system that we'll then use going forward at different rates. The rate here starts at, obviously, we've heard the number, 4% for condos, different for townhouses. But the idea is that anything over that 1 million threshold, it kicks in, and then we have the graduated rates up. Now, unfortunately, for co-ops, whoever wrote the law probably never stepped foot in a co-op.
It's going to open up
Yeah.
Pandora's box for co-ops.
Yeah.
Because if you're now in a co-op, and let's say I'm in a co-op, Briggs is a shareholder, he lives in Monaco, driving his fancy cars around.
Sounds great.
And he's like, man, I'm not paying the pied-à-terre tax. Instead of hitting Briggs with a tax lien, because there's no individual tax lots, as all of our agents know in co-ops, they got to hit the entire damn building with a tax lot. So with a tax lien. So now Heather's going to sell her apartment, and Eric, you're buying it with financing, and guess what? You
I can't buy
get
it.
an effing loan.
No. Nope.
Because of Briggs is in Monaco not paying his pied-à-terre tax.
By the
This
way,
is-
that's like
this-
the
but-
exact person that would not pay it is a person that's overseas
Right.
and doesn't care, and they're offended by it.
But
and
let me
they're
ask you
going
this.
to not pay it.
Are they going to get in the co-op to begin with, though? I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean,
Listen,
how long until the lawsuits start showing up?
Right.
Oh, it's going to be
6
next
months.
week because the fact that you now as a buyer can be hit with a tax lien for something that is unassociated with you simply because you're in a proprietary lease, so you don't actually
Right.
own the unit, is going to, I think what's going to end up happening is many co-ops are going to restrict pied-à-terres, which is probably going to be the instant shift. That's then going to cause more people to flood the rental market. It's not going to be this massive wave, but you're going to have even more people that now aren't qualified buyers and become renters. And, since we are in a world where for some reason nobody understands that the only way to reduce cost of housing is to add inventory, New York prices for renters are just going to keep going up.
so the city becomes less affordable. Great.
Which is
Right.
what we've been trying to, battle to begin
Right.
with.
The,
So,
the law also oddly makes the tax collector the building.
Yeah.
well, right.
Yeah.
And but
Which-
isn't that against the proprietary lease?
It goes
Is
completely against the
in
proprietary
most
lease.
cases.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
actually had not in every case, but in many cases, it will be against the proprietary lease. Those proprietary leases will have to change. Your boards have to choose between following the proprietary lease or following the law. Buildings that are lax in collecting. I mean, it's like The Sopranos. Like, make your collections. Unless you pay us, we're gonna kick the crap out of you. What kind of Sopranos bullshit is this? Think about it this way: the city can fine the building if they're lax on tax enforcement.
And I've already heard of buildings that are instantaneously increasing their maintenance as a preventative
Oh,
for
wow.
the assumed pied-à-terre people not paying. I've heard it on a couple of occurrences. Somebody that I know that their board just voted on it, and they're increasing their maintenance simply because they want to have extra funds in the event that the percentage of overseas pied-à-terre owners don't pay. I mean, how are you going to force them to pay? It's you can't suddenly change the proprietary lease to make it a requirement because it would require a vote that most of the boards would probably require a supermajority to change the rules that you now have to, as a tenant of the space, follow the city's pied-à-terre tax.
Well, how about this though? How about Heather had rented out her apartment? Sorry, how about Heather was a pied-à-terre owner, so she's getting charged the pied-à-terre tax, but then there's a sale, and I'm buying it, and I'm going to use it full time, but I'm going to get a tax bill in 6 months from the city that I then have to grieve because they have her on file as having a pied-à-terre tax. Does that mean that at closing I'm gonna have to pay like an escrow amount against the pied-à-terre tax? Like what kind of liability will a co-op have if you're going from a pied-à-terre tax to a non? How do you can't grieve a tax until you're assessed it as an owner. So what's the mechanism for me to not get that bill in the first place? There's no language in the bill that covers that.
No, isn't there a co-op condo association or non-for-profit?
Yes.
I mean, at what point does that organization not step in and file a class action suit and freeze this whole thing, just like the Soho NoHo coalition came in and froze the artist
AIR?
the joint live work quarters for artists, froze that and froze that whole litigation. It finally went through, but that stalled it for 5 years, and so there was no collection of it.
I think the complication is that this is a pretty clear circumstance for condos. For co-ops, those are the ones that are really going to end up in the more complicated situation. I don't know how it plays out, but to your point about a lawsuit, I think it's going to happen almost instantaneously, because it's going to happen. You're going to get a billionaire overseas that says, I'm never paying this. And there's no way to truly force it upon them unless the co-op does it themselves, and it would go against the bylaws of most co-ops to do it. So it's going to it'll go into litigation very, very quickly. The question is it class action, or is it just going to be building by building? But regrettably, nobody is getting the right answers. There's paranoia in the space. You have a lot of people that are wealthy overseas thinking that their $2 million apartment is applicable when it's not. And then there's confusion as to how it's going to get collected. And
Right.
if you don't have to look any further than England to see exactly what happened in London when they did this, as to what the outcome's going to be. Yeah. I mean, why are we doing this when you could actually be doing policy to build more inventory to solve housing problems instead of taxing
I'll
the
tell you
only
why.
group?
So
I can tell you, it's election year politics. This doesn't impact New York State voters, right? Like,
Correct.
So
It's the only
you bring
group
a
that
very
can't
good
vote.
point. Let's move the tax conversation to Florida. You all have stakes in Florida. Briggs, your parents, and I think both Heather and Jason have homes in Florida. What about them removing the property tax? How is that going to implement lifestyle going forward? I mean, isn't that how you pay for your police? How you pay for schools? What are they thinking?
Well, they're running at their financial situation is quite a bit stronger than New York. So I would follow their lead before. Yeah, I would follow their lead before being negative on them.
Yeah.
The local counties, the local municipalities, I have no idea how you're going to fund police, fire, and schools. I mean, you have to raise your local millage rates, which maybe offsets the lack of money going that less goes to the state, but more will go locally to your municipality. If this passes, Jonathan Miller estimated that it will raise property values between 7% and 9%, which only makes the state less affordable.
Right.
It's becoming unaffordable as it is, particularly in South Florida. My goodness, you see what's happening between like the Palm Beach to Miami corridor, and then on the other side of the coast too. It's like the market doesn't need this sort of stimuli in it for price appreciation, and you do worry about basic services not being met. So I find it to be. Listen, is it great to pay way less property taxes? Sure, but I think there's gonna be consequences to that. I can't quite make sense of it, to be honest.
But wasn't the intent that they were going to increase sales tax as a theoretical offset?
Did not increase sales tax. So
Did not increase.
The ballot proposition. So it goes before the voters to raise the homestead exemption, which is at $50,000 now. It'll go up to $250,000.
Yeah.
And then I think $500,000. So that'd be really big. I mean, for some people, they're going to go down to like zero tax, or like, I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand how you're going to fund local police and fire. I don't understand.
Have you talked to any of your clients that are concerned about this, or is it just still too new to
Most
really...
people are excited about it, to be honest. They're like, oh, I pay less taxes. But I think when you really look at it, if it just means you're paying less to the state and more to like the local municipality, like, does it matter? I mean, come out a wash. I don't know. I mean,
Right.
yes, Florida as a state has had a surge of revenue over the last 5 years that has allowed it to have their budget is very different than in many states. But that doesn't mean that the counties, that the local municipalities will have the resources they need to like fund essential services.
Great. Any final comments before we wrap up our first episode?
No, I think we've crossed obviously a lot of different topics.
Yeah.
I do think it's important that we continue to expand on the conversation of a national listing service. I think that topic is very fluid and in the moment something that is probably going to happen. It's been talked about for many, many years and not successful. But I think that AI being the elephant in the room is probably going to be the thing that finally pushes the country to actually create one.
So the last episode of State of Real Estate, we closed with everybody finishing this statement. The future of real estate is, Heather.
Thank God I didn't get to go first.
Yeah, thanks for that.
The future of real estate is?
The future of real estate is AI. And, I mean, listen, it is how fast it's moving. If you as an agent aren't trying to understand it, that's the problem, right? So if you want to stay in the game and you want to stay employed and be in business, you need to get with it.
Jason, the future of real estate is?
The technology changes, the trust doesn't.
I like that.
You had time to think about that. So
I needed a few seconds, but.
And Briggs, the future of real estate is?
So mine is actually very close to his. He just used a different word, but the technology is going to change. But the reality is success is still going to be based upon relationships.
Always boils down to relationships. So that's our first State of Real Estate. And what a way to start. Thank you to Heather, Jason, and Briggs. Your candor, your perspective, your willingness to have this conversation, that's exactly what we need in our industry today. So we're live every week right here. Bring your questions, bring your opinions, and bring a colleague next time. Because the conversation doesn't stop when the stream ends. It's only the beginning. So I want to say happy 13th birthday to my goddaughter, Annabella Recabaron, Chiquitita. Your padrino loves you and very proud of you. So we'll see you next week. It's a great day for real estate.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye. Take care, guys.